Welcome to Adeline Redesign. This is part 3 of an assembly line style flipping of furniture. You don't have to have watched parts 1 and 2, but you might want to. In this part of the series, what I'll be doing is trying various paint and primer and sanding combinations because I have this opportunity to do testing. I will need to be leaving soon for a week out of town, and so I'm setting up experiments using different colors of paint, different types of paint, different kinds of primer, different amounts of primer, and different amounts of sanding. It's all very technical. Not really. I just chose at fairly random what I thought could work, what I felt positive would work, and then went through and labeled everything to make sure that when I came back and did scratch tests, I would have a very good understanding of the results and what the minimum amount of prep, priming, and paint would be needed for me to get adequate coverage and have high quality pieces at the end with minimal effort. I look forward to sharing my results with you. The options on primer are 123 Spray On Primer, which was featured in the last video. I also have a Zinsser shellac-based primer that I'll be rolling on to some of the pieces, either doing 1 or 2 coats. And then the paints are Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover for white and Rust-Oleum Door and Trim in black, also Rust-Oleum Door and Trim in yellow, and 2 pieces. Additionally, I use 220 sandpaper. We use sandpaper before painting or before primer in order to give some tooth to the piece for it to stick on, especially when it's shinier or if it's a laminate or a plastic, which I just said laminate, those are, well, anyway, especially if it's a particularly shiny piece and very smooth, it can be hard to get something to stick onto it. And so sometimes, quite often rather, people will use a 220 sand grit to rough up the surface before they do paint. It has nothing to do with trying to get anything sanded down as you would in regular woodworking. Here's the Zinsser primer that I'll be using after having just had a pretty big fight with the nightstands. As you saw, I had put them down, then realized I forgot to put a drop cloth. The drop cloth I use in this case is an upholstery fabric in black and brown. I got at Habitat for Humanity for $15, an enormous amount of it. I also got kind of a beige one, and a great deal. I've used it repeatedly. I got this $2 little promise that has failed me to put on the paint can at Home Depot. They had a kind of an impulse buy, and I'm so tired of pouring out the paint and having it go wrong. I want to find a solution that is real and not just looks good in advertisements. I want it to actually work. I would welcome comments telling me what you do that is actually effective, because I've spent the entirety of this video so far just fighting with products, with the exception of being able to open the Zinsser shellac just fine. I fought the nightstands, I fought the upholstery, and now I'm gonna fight this paint can pourer thing. I'm already exasperated with the experiment, and before I spill it just everywhere, and I just use it to scrape it up. Okay, let me tell you about the paints that I'm going to be using, as well as the Zinsser shellac-based primer. If you've tried to fix bleed-through of tannins on wood, then you know about shellac, and so you might know about shellac-based primer. It is clear or with an amber color when it's just the shellac, and then it's usually white when it is the shellac-based bin interior primer and sealer, and they're going to run you about the same amount. The shellac alone is a little less expensive, but you want to use it for the application that you need it for. Based on what the company says, if you're looking for a silver bullet primer that covers everything that's unwanted, Rust-Oleum's Zinsser primer is the original shellac-based primer and sealer. There's Nothing better at permanently blocking stains, odor, and wood knots. It's for interior and spot exterior use. It's considered to be the greatest stain sealer. It seals knots and sap streaks. It also seals pet smoke and musty odors, sticks to any surface without sanding, and it dries really quickly. You can recoat within 45 minutes. For best use, you're supposed to use it for indoors or just spot exterior use, and it works with any kind of top coat. Comes in a gallon, 5 gallons, quart size, pint size, or 13-ounce spray. What I'm using is the quart that'll run you about 23 bucks. Aside from the part about how shellac is superior at sealing out wood tannins, we don't have another better solution than shellac. I wanted to say about the pet smoke and musty odors, shellac alone can work really well for that. So if you have an older piece or you purchase an older piece and the smell is terrible, on the interior you can spray the clear shellac or the amber shellac so you don't have to have the white color of the bin primer. I said it usually comes in white, and by usually I meant always. But for shellac on its own, that can be a great way to seal out odors of a piece that's older without having to get an ozone machine. Though ozone generators certainly have their uses, I won't knock those entirely, but for most of us, it's preferable to just be able to spray down with shellac. Now, the primer that you see me using here is the bin shellac-based primer. The primer that is already on the pieces is the 123, and that's from the last episode. The tools that I'm using to apply these, the roller and the brush, are pieces that will go in the trash after I'm done. Shellac-based primer is not oil-based because it's shellac-based, and it's not water-based because it's shellac-based, but it dries so quickly, so hard, sticks to everything so well that cleaning it up is a Sisyphean waste of time, and I would recommend against it. I don't know of any furniture refinishers that spend the energy and the resources of paint thinner or fuel or whatever it is that you're using to clean the materials with. I don't know of anybody that actually goes through those efforts. If you're using a shellac-based primer, expect to be using paint brushes, foam, or rollers that will be thrown away after use. You can see my suitcase in the background there that I got specifically for this trip, and it broke on that trip. So I'm not going to recommend that backpack, even though Amazon said it was their top pick. Maybe I'm the problem. I often am the reason I can't have nice things. Though it was super inexpensive, so I'm not that worried. Though in the video I'm still using the primer, I want to talk about the paints that I'll be using. They're Rust-Oleum products. One is going to be Painter's Touch Ultra Cover Multi-Purpose Brush On. That's long-winded. And the second one that I'll be using is Rust-Oleum's Door and Trim Advanced Dry. The difference between these financially is that the Painter's Touch, which is going to be in the white, is about 50 cents an ounce, and the Door and Trim is about 70 cents an ounce. Not an enormous difference, and I admit that my testing is not that fair because I'm using the less expensive Ultra Cover in white and the more expensive Rust-Oleum product that's the Door and Trim in black. And black is naturally always going to provide better coverage, and so that part of the test isn't quite fair to Painter's Touch. The scratch test later on will be entirely fair within reason. My methods are not so well done that even I respect them that much, though I feel very confident about how my results turned out. About the Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch Ultra Cover Multi-Purpose Brush-On Paint, it provides a smooth and durable finish that lasts longer than ordinary paints. You can apply it to wood, metal, plaster, masonry, or unglazed ceramic. It resists chips and fading. It can be used indoors, outdoors. Cleanup is soap and water, not throw away, give up. You can Prime bare wood or metal before application is their recommendation. You can get it in a half pint or in a quart size. They have a number of colors that it comes ready to use in. Some of the most popular colors, an off-white, an off-white, a light brown, and anyway, there are a number of colors that you can use, and it'll run you about 50 cents. It's multi-purpose, and you can use it on a lot of different projects. I enjoy the way that it goes on. I like the way that it feels using it, and I don't have much negative to say about it. With the singular exception of the recoat is to be done 2 to 4 hours after the first coat for painter's touch, whereas Rust-Oleum's door and trim paint you can recoat after 1 hour, which is nice. For the Rust-Oleum door and trim paint, it dries quickly compared to oil paints, up to 3 times faster than traditional oil paints. And because it compares itself to oil paints, that lets you know that we're talking about a pretty durable paint. It is for interior or exterior use on metal, wood, fiberglass, and trim. It's durable, chip resistant, water-based. So because it's water-based, it emits less odor, and you can clean it up with soap and water. It comes in a satin sheen. It's fade resistant. It's dry to the touch within 45 minutes, though the recoat time is after 1 hour. It is entirely dry within 6 hours. They recommend that you use a high-quality brush or roller with it, and it comes in a number of paint colors, 6 that are pre-mixed, and then 4 tint bases is what they call them. One of what I'm using is going to be a tint base that is a yellow tint base. I had asked at Habitat for Humanity, because that's where I purchased it, for $4.99 rather than the $26 I think it was at the store. I got the yellow tint base to try and discovered that when they say yellow tint base, they mean yellow, yellow, yellow. I'm not going to love the way that it looks, and that's okay. I don't have to, and I don't have to use that color if I don't want to, or I may if I choose to. I'm not going to choose to. There's your spoiler alert. What I will choose to do is use a trash can liner for a small trash can to cover my paint tray. This is Rust-Oleum's door and trim paint that I'll be using in black. I love the way it looks as you see the transition from the white to black. It's such a dramatic change in a way that the Ben Shellac white primer to Rust-Oleum's white paint in painter's touch just doesn't do it for you. I use a Kleenex when I take my mallet to close the paint can there to avoid sprays from the paint coming out at me and to limit the, oh, look at that. That's nice. And the first coat, of course, doesn't provide perfect coverage. I didn't expect it to, and I don't want it to. If you're tempted to make sure the first coat provides total coverage, learn a different temptation to have. Crave carbs or something, I don't know. Because the thin coat to begin with and the thin coats as you go on is part of what's going to help make sure that the product is going to last for a long time. It's incredibly tempting when you first start painting and you see that it's kind of blotchy and you don't have full coverage to want to lay it on thick. Lay it on thick is not a compliment. That's not a phrase that we use to mean something that's great. So don't try to lay it on thick. Keep it real, keep it thin, and you will have a higher quality product at the end. As I've already determined before, the further I go in using this assembly line style of furniture refinishing, the more that I recognize how much time is saved in that I get better and better at whatever the step I'm on is as I continue. So the first top that I covered took me a minute. The second top that I covered took me a little less than a minute. And the third, by the time I get to the fourth, I'm moving so much more quickly than the first. I'm doing it as well or better than I am the first. And I think over the long run, that kind of thing is going to save me ultimately a great deal of time. These are the drawers now that I'm doing in black. To get that primer on, I had used a brush and really had to go into the nooks and crannies in a way that, of course, I didn't have to with the drawer or the nightstand tops. I try to use the brush at some point, and you can see me when I lift it up on end to try to get into the crevices there. It works, but it damages the foam of the brush, and that's fine because I'm not going to be cleaning these brushes. They're foam, they're inexpensive. I am spoiled and decided that it's not worth the amount of time and effort to try to clean them, because even in cleaning them, there's some damage that I can do that makes them unsuitable for reuse later. But doing the drawer fronts is a little more challenging than doing the tops of the nightstands because of all the crevices that come with it. Though I'm not that disappointed in the challenge, because this look, while in the kind of mahogany color that we see in the beginning is not currently very popular, this look is incredibly popular. To have fluted parts of a nightstand that is older to begin with, ooh, is great. Look, so I take the trash bag and I remove it from the paint tray, cover it, and put it all in the fridge. In that case, I put it in a cardboard box. An hour later, when it's time to recoat, I pull that trash bag out of the fridge. I put another trash bag onto the paint liner and I start over. I'm allowed to keep my roller that way, and the cool air stops it from hardening, it stops it from setting, it reduces the amount of schmutz, as I say, that may be in it, and so it's really advantageous to me to use the refrigerator and using airtight or reducing the air exposure methods, so that between coats I don't damage the tool. I don't have to pick out another foam roller. Even though these are fairly inexpensive, I'd rather not have to use any more product than I have to. And the second coat goes on in such a lovely way. I feel like I spend so much of my vacation really just excited about how great that second coat of black paint went on. So again, I take the trash can and I use it to remove the foam roller, and now that just goes right into the trash. It's super easy cleanup for me to use these tiny trash bags, and when I don't use them to remove a roller or don't use them to entirely coat it in paint, I can let it dry and then use it as a trash can, or just turn it inside out and then use it as the trash bag liner that it was intended to be initially. There's not enough places where I reuse, admittedly. Now, here's the store and trim in the yellow base. That's yellow base right there, folks. That's yellow tint base is what they call it. I don't know what tint means to them, but to me it was going to be lighter, I thought, and it's not. And that's okay. As I said, it was $4.99, I think, or $3.99. Habitat for Humanity has some fantastic deals. So I go ahead and use it on this first piece that I have not primed, though I did have Bondo and did sand down, and so I have sanding without primer, and then I'm going over it in this door and trim, which theoretically doesn't need primer in this situation, but it's not facing the normal situation that it would, so I don't know that that theory is going to hold, and I'm so disappointed as I watch that color. I move to white in the painter's touch, which initially was not my plan. I expected to use the door and trim paint on all of the projects, but I disliked the yellows so much that I moved to the all-purpose paint from Rust-Oleum that's painter's touch, which, oh, I don't want to spoil it. It'll be fine, though. I'll go ahead and let you know it's going to be fine. And it is nice to see that white go on and provide the coverage that it does after having the primer base on it. And you can see again on this second piece as the white goes on how it covers it very well initially. I'm incredibly pleased with those results, and I'll be pleased with the black and white paints moving forward with almost no exception. Getting it into the grooves is a challenge again, and I'm kind of behind part of the nightstands. I'll need to remind myself that I have an audience that's in the background when I'm painting, though I have to let you know that when it comes to choosing between getting the shot and getting the product right, I pick the product every time. The furniture matters the most to me, and there are many times when time is essential, and this is one of them. I am minutes away from needing to catch my ride to the airport at this point, but I really want to make sure that I get on a second coat of that white paint. I had taken that white paint, covered it up, put it in the fridge so that I could take a brief nap before it was time for my flight, come out, put on a second coat of white paint before it was time to leave. The day I flew out for Tennessee, I spent about 5 hours on the 8 side tables the day leading into the next morning. And while I was on vacation, I spent about an hour on them. So that leads us to whatever number we're at now. If you want to help support the art, support the channel, you can send me $1 at Adeline Redesign or click like. And up next, we're going to have scratch tests. And there will be absolutely zero sound of scratching because I didn't like it to begin with, so I'm not going to hear it a second time myself. I love when people have the warnings, but you get a forewarning that you don't have to hear it, and you'll get to see how well everything did after just under a week of being left alone while I was in Tennessee. Tune in next time for the scratch test and the new application method that I'll be showing you of how to help cover damaged veneer. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Click like and stuff.